No, and there's only really one item on the regular agenda, so it's not, just, you okay, Walter? Michelle will be back in a minute anyway. I call to order the Riviera Beach Community Redevelopment Agency meeting of December 9th. The time is 8:48 p.m. Madam Clerk, please call the roll. Where'd she go? Mr. CRA Director, would you call, oh, never mind. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner McCoy?
Here.
Commissioner Lanier?
Here.
Commissioner Miller-Anderson?
Present.
Vice Chair Lawson?
Here.
Chair Botel?
Here.
Also present, Jonathan Evans, CRA Executive Director, Michael Haygood, General Counsel, and Tamara Sagan, CRA Clerk.
Thank you. We'll have a moment of silence followed by the Pledge of Allegiance led by Commissioner Lawson. Not Commissioner. Councilperson. Commissioner.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Any person who would like to speak on an agenda item, please complete a blue public comment card located at the front desk and give it to the staff prior to the item being taken up by CRA Commission for discussion. Members of the public will be given a total of 3 minutes to speak on all items listed on the consent agenda and 3 minutes to speak on each regular agenda item. The time limit for public comment may be reduced by a vote of the CRA Board of Commissioners based on the voluminous nature of public comment cards. In no event will anyone be allowed to submit a comment card to speak on an agenda item after the resolution is read or the item considered. Do we have any additions, deletions, or substitutions for the agenda?
None from staff, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Mr. McCoy?
Yes. Just 1 second. I got an annotated agenda here, and I need to put on.
Sorry.
I need to put on my glasses. I would like to pull off a consent the invoice for Michael Haygood. I don't see it on here, but yeah.
Okay. Any objection? Any other deletions? Do we have any disclosures by commissioner or staff?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
can I clarify?
Yes.
So not only do I want to pull it off for consent, I would like to rearrange it at our second item because I really have, I guess, I want to put it at number 2 after regular business.
You want to put it at number 2,
Number 2 after
Okay.
regular business.
not number 5A and then have 5B.
5A.
Well, 5 is the item on the regular agenda. Did you want to make it 5A to come just before the Marina Phase 2 development discussion?
Okay, I'm sorry. Well, Madam Chair, that's not what I have here.
Okay.
The agenda I got only has,
Could Mr. McCoy have a regular agenda, please?
I checked that front.
I let him borrow mine and it's too confusing.
I pull it online. If you can just engage me for 1 second. I'll get it. The one line was not up yet, so. Okay, I'm sorry. Madam Chair, I would like to put it at 5A, please.
5A, and then we'll make 5B the marina discussion. Okay. Would someone care to make a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. The motion to adopt the agenda is moved and seconded. As your name is called, please answer yes if you agree, no if you disagree. Madam Clerk?
Commissioner McCoy?
Yes.
Commissioner Lanier?
Yes.
Commissioner Miller Anderson?
Yes.
Vice Chair Lawson?
Yes.
Chair Botel?
Yes.
So, Madam Chair,
Yes.
just to clarify, so of the item that I just requested, it appears that that item is listed under item number 1, but I specifically want to pull the invoice pertaining to Haygood from item number 1 and take it as 5A. So when
Okay.
we approve consent, I want to approve it
Yes.
as is with Haygood invoice be taken as 5A.
Thank you. All matters listed under this item are considered to be routine, and action will be taken by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a commissioner so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the general order of business and considered in its normal sequence on the agenda. Does anyone wish to make a motion to approve the consent agenda, which has been modified to remove one invoice from item number 1?
So moved.
We have a
Second.
Thank you. Any other debate or discussion? Madam Clerk?
Commissioner McCoy?
Yes.
Commissioner Lanier?
Yes.
Commissioner Miller Anderson?
Yes.
Vice Chair Lawson?
Yes.
Chair Botel?
Yes, the consent agenda is approved with a 5-0 vote. Item number 5A will now be that invoice.
Number 5.
5 and then 6, then, okay.
5 and then 5A.
Okay, oh, 5 and then 5A, yes, okay. fine. The invoice is for, let's find it on the agenda here, $17,622.50. Mr. CRA Director, do you want to make a presentation about that?
I'm sorry, Madam Chair, so can we take it after? I said 5A.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you wanted it to be before.
No,
So
no,
you
no,
wanted after.
5,
Okay.
and then we
I
take it
got it
5A.
now. All right, so then 5 is the Marina Phase 2 development. Mr. CRA Director?
Madam Chair, if I can have the CRA attorney, Mr. Haygood, present this item, as he's designated as the project liaison.
Thank you.
Yes, board members. This item was originally scheduled, I circulated the memo earlier today.
In the microphone, Mr. Haygood, we can't hear you. In the mic.
Can you hear me? Is it better?
That's better, thank you.
This item was originally to be before the board for a discussion about the APD and Tezrel Partners review by Dr. Fishkind as to whether or not there was a financial analysis of their proposal. There were two things that happened which we have requested that the item be pulled. Number one, the Tezrel Partners have requested an additional 30 days in which to submit their financials to Dr. Fishkind. Based upon the fact that there were some items or issues that they wanted clarification on, which the committee, the joint committee could not give them, because they really were issues that we need directions from the board. And I'll go into those items later. The second was contrary to what the Dr. Fishkind, I think we had circulated a report from Dr. Fishkind, and he said that he had not received certain information from APD. APD did submit the information in an email to me and several other individuals, but the item was not sent to Dr. Fishkind. We didn't get it to him until today, and Dr. Fishkind said it wasn't sufficient time for him to review it and to make a report. That material only related to the items that APD stated that they would be responsible for. It did not address the other items that Tesoro Partners was to, in fact, submit information.
Madam Chair,
You're recognized.
so, and my sincerest apologies, Mr. Haygood, because I'm not exactly sure what you're saying. So let's start over, and can you clarify specifically with clarity exactly what you're saying? Because now you're speaking of there was no clarification, and then there's I guess there's some failure was by someone. So I just want to make sure I'm clear, and that's in part why I pulled your resume, your invoice to the last. So let's start over. And into the microphone, Mr. Haygood, so we can all hear this.
Well, do you have a specific question that maybe
I
that
do,
would
but I
help?
want to hear your explanation as to where we are with item number 5.
Okay. Well, I told you there were two parts to it. The first one was that in the latter part of November, Tesla Group requested a 30-day extension to submit their information, financial information, to Dr. Fishkind. That information related specifically to the residential parts of the proposed development.
Latter day of November?
I'm sorry?
You said the latter days of November.
Yes, I think it was November 24th.
Okay, thank you.
The second thing that I said that Dr. Fishkind had prepared a report stating that he hadn't received any information from either Tesro or from APD.
And that was what date, Mr.
They submitted that?
The date that Mr. Fishkind informed you that they had not received any information?
I don't know the specific date. I think it was, his report was due December the 2nd, and I think at that time he stated that he had not received any information.
Okay, but whether he stated or not, wouldn't you have been the intermediary?
Yeah, well, and as I said in my note to the board, I do take responsibility for not forwarding APD's information directly to Dr. Fishkind. But I must say I was not the only person on the email.
Right?
But yes,
Thank you, sir. But we'll bring that later part up about whose responsibility it was. But I just wanted to make sure that we're all on the same page. So Fishkind indicated that he did receive the information from APD.
correct.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. You can continue, Mr.
Yes.
Good.
And as a result of that, he couldn't have provided a complete report without the information from Tesoro anyway. So it was going to be a comprehensive report on the entire development, not just on one segment of it. As a result of these factors, I think as a group, we are recommending that the board give a 30-day extension for Tesoro to submit their information and for Dr. Fishkind to review the information that had been submitted by APD. To do this in a comprehensive manner, there are certain items that we are requesting the board to clarify. One, I think we had worked out most of the issues with the development team as far as all of the other elements except the housing. And specifically on the housing, the board wanted direction of the board. The committee wanted direction from the board on whether, because it wasn't something that we could do, whether or not you wanted market rate housing or market rate units as opposed to affordable housing units.
Mr.
Madam Chair.
McCoy, recognized.
So, Mr. Haygood, if you could just clarify to me and to the body, when you say the committee, who does that consist of?
Consisted of staff,
Specifically,
Mr. Evans,
is that Scott Evans or John?
and both.
J. Evans?
Dr.
The
Botel,
brothers,
should I say the brothers?
The brothers Evans.
Okay,
Dr. Botel.
okay.
Let's see who else. I don't have the list before me, but it was most of the staff, the rest of it was city staff. Also,
So we don't know who those city staff are?
well, I don't have the list before me, and I don't have it in recall.
But surely you were part of that committee, so you say, right?
Yeah, but I don't recall. If you give me a second, I'll tell you everyone on it.
Okay, well, tell me who you do know of at this point,
I
because
did. I just did. Okay. And I think they're in the emails that we forwarded also to the board and to you, but I will,
and I believe that I received it. I just want to make sure I'm not missing someone.
Madam Chair, if I may provide some additional
You're
names.
recognized.
Thank you. We did have the city attorney, the deputy city manager, the assistant city manager. Were all incorporated as part of the team, as well as Ms. Jenkins, and Shirley Desir was assisting with facilitating some correspondence and the names that Mr. Haygood articulated, and I think that's all encompassing the group from the staff side.
Madam Chair?
You're recognized.
So, Mr. Haygood, what I'm understanding, Mr. Scott Evans, Mr. Jonathan Evans, Chairwoman Botel, and also the chair of the CRA, you, Mr. Haygood, McBride, Jacobs, and Desir. And you said you wanted clarification.
And Anita Jenkins.
And,
Anita Jenkins.
and Mr. Sherman and Ms. Nguyen.
And Clarence.
And you said Clarence?
Sermons, yeah.
Okay. And you said you wanted to get clarification on the housing component?
yes, sir, from the board. It was something that we couldn't decide. And we suggested to the developers that because of the, I guess, location of the property, also the value of the property, that asked them to include, look at including market rate housing in the project.
Okay. And so if I can just back up for a second, was Mr. Fishkind in on that as well?
He was involved in some of the meetings. I don't know if he had a suggestion on the others concerning that.
He was, if I may, he was not at the meeting at which we discussed the need to have input from the rest of the commissioners with regard to whether or not we should have market rate housing. I don't believe that Mr. Fishkind was at that meeting.
Okay. All right, thank you. You can finish, Mr. Haygood.
And the second issue was the developers had suggested for the development of the housing that they would rely on either tax credits or low-income housing tax credits or new market tax credits. We wanted clarification from the board because of the fact that those aren't very concrete ways of financing, if in fact they should find another financing method to do the housing. As you probably know, it's very competitive, and we didn't know how long, if the board was willing to take the time or take the, what should I say, the chance of them applying for those, that type of financing. I mean, one direction from the board of whether or not you actually wanted to do that.
Follow up.
Thank you. You go ahead.
So the committee made that, would you call it a decision?
Well, it wasn't a decision because we were bringing it to you to see if in fact,
Well, Mr. Haygood, I'm going to give you some time to think about it because I looked at the email and I'm specifically concerned that that's exactly what it said. But I don't want to say that I'm being accusatory, but I seen something from Mr. Fishkind that kind of said that we need to see something that reflects the market reality. So if you're telling me that what you sent to, well, what you're saying is it's a board decisions, that's not what the email that came from Mr. Fishkind. So I'm trying to get down to how we change paths here. And obviously, Mr. Jonathan Evans, Scott Evans, Chairwoman Botel, Attorney Haygood, Deputy Manager McBride, Assistant City Manager Jacobs, Ms. Shirley Desir in her executive administrative function, Ms. Anita Jenkins in her neighborhood services function, Mr. Clarence Sermons, and Mr. Fishkind as the economist, and Ms. Dawn Wynn as the city attorney, can decide what the intentions of the board was. And I went through all of the emails, and I'm very much confused, and I would hope that this is the time that we get down to the nitty-gritty. So it seems that the city CRA executive director has a response. Madam Chair.
Mr. Evans.
Madam Chair, really quick. Also, another question is about the parking. There was discussions with regards to the parking. With respect to the housing and the mix of housing, at least 4 or 5 times in public discussions, the board has talked about, even as most recently about the Pinnacle project, that it was a desire to see more market rate opportunities, and as well as the discussion that we had concerning the 11th Street project that the CRA is looking to bring online, that providing for opportunities to look at market rate housing. So in conversations with the developers, in order to assist in facilitating their proposal to provide them more options, we said that based on the conversations the board has had, even as early as today, and what you've heard even from Lake Park, is that there is a demand for that market rate product, and providing them another tool in the toolbox. Not that they had to submit their proposal, nor that staff would ever disqualify them, because all that resides with the board. But based on what we believe the legislative intent from the board was in multiple conversations, that there was a desire to see some type of market rate element, and thought that adding that to the discussion would provide them an opportunity to seek additional funding to help facilitate the projects. And so that was why that additional tool was proffered as an opportunity to assist in providing the financing and the mechanisms to provide the documentation necessary for Mr. Fishkind to review.
Mr. McCoy.
Thank you. So, Mr. Evans, when you say what we believe, that represents the committee?
What we believe is from the discussions that the board has had at least 4 or 5 times on multiple projects about market rate project or units throughout the community.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm not going to belabor it because certainly I was confused, and we've received a litany of emails regarding this, and there was a change which was being offered of what was already accepted as the proposal. And I'm not exactly sure, Mr. Jonathan Evans, that I understand that if we just spent probably a whole special meeting talking about the Pinnacle project and the HTG project, which both encompasses not market rate, but obviously, housing that was based on 4%. Actually, it wasn't 4% tax credit. It was based on tax credits. I don't remember what they're 9% tax credits. 9% tax credit. So when I get these emails, I'm saying that was not originally a part of the RFP, nor was it a part of, a reason that we chose not to include someone because of tax credits. But I yield back. I just wanted to make sure because I could not wait till the opportunity to find out, like, if you guys believe or want to create something, make sure it's a representative of the board, because we can't expect anybody. And you know, I wrote this down from the town of Lake Park, and this was the most important thing, and I want to share this, and I'm glad that they're not here. But 5 parcels with a $200 million investment, which equates to $340 million of taxable value based on the improvements, and the Avalon revenue to the city was $1.7 million. Our CRA budget is more than the entire town of Lake Parks. And I'm trying to see why in the heck are we sitting here going back and forth with discrepancies about who's responsible for making sure that when it comes to a developer that they're talking to the right person? Because we were quoted in the newspaper, and I have that newspaper article here, and that's from October of 2019. And I'm afraid we're no further 12 months later, 14 months later, than we were when this article was posted. And I really feel like what is this very much opinionated committee that included Mr. Evans, Jonathan Evans, Scott Evans, Botel, the attorney Haygood, deputy, assistant manager, Ms. Desir, Ms. Jenkins, Mr. Sermons, Mr. Fishkind, and Ms. Wynn, what exactly is your intentions? Because perhaps that's different than what we embodied as the CRA. And I'm at the point where if we're moving forward, and I do see staff's recommendation, but you cannot sit here and tell me you're going to move the goalposts, and that's certainly not a position of the body. When I went through the RFP, and I'm just at the point where I'm seeing the little town of Lake Park, whose budget is smaller than our entire CRA, their whole operating city budget. And it just seems like this article pointed out, and it was published in the Palm Beach Post, that there is a severe lack of communication. And I'm going to yield back, but I certainly want to end this item on who is the person that's responsible. Or if necessary, I would like to retain the same firm that got the town of Lake Park off and moving, because this seems like I'm going in circles. And unlike many of the staff people that we heard mentioned today, I'm here on borrowed time, and I have a time limit, and what I don't want is to waste it. So I'm going to yield back, Madam Chair, and I want to hear from them to present their presentation in the body of the board.
Thank you.
One thing I'd like to clarify.
If Councilwoman Lanier was trying to say something.
Submission of the response from the developers to the RFP was a proposal. It is not in stone. It is not something that has been agreed to. So we're in the process now of trying to negotiate a deal, get some direction from you as to what you want to do. So that's why we listed the 2 questions as to how do you want to move forward. If the board's direction is they want to have affordable housing on the property, then that's how we'll move forward. And I think it'll give direction also to the developers. If you say, yes, we will allow you to apply for tax credits, and the development will be dependent upon that, and that's what we'll do.
Commissioner Lanier, did you want to speak?
Yes, Madam Chair. I just wanted to say that, first of all, the way this has gone is totally and utterly ridiculous. First of all, what we were looking for and what we agreed to at the last meeting was that the proposal that was submitted, because it could not be changed, it could not be altered, it could not be added to or taken from. The proposal that was submitted will be reviewed by a consultant for financial feasibility, and then it will be given back to the board with recommendations. Now we're talking about affordable housing, we're talking about all these other things, when in fact, all we're supposed to be doing at this point is waiting for the consultant to provide us with a financial feasibility of the proposal that was originally submitted. And what we have is another round of miscommunication. Mr. Fishkind submitted a report and said that they had not received, that his office had not received anything from the joint venture, from the joint group that provided the proposal. And there was nothing from that group. Then we find out that there was something from the group that was sent to the attorney but was not forwarded to Mr. Fishkind. So therefore, his report reflected that there was nothing that was submitted. That is totally unacceptable. That is totally unacceptable. We have waited 3 months to move forward with this project one way or the other. And here we are with another miscommunication, another misstep, because an email wasn't forwarded or because they were not clear about what it was. This is getting to be ridiculous here. It is a farce, and it makes the city look like we are incompetent. First of all, Mr. Haygood should not be over this project at all, because this is the second time that people have sent information. There's this miscommunication. Nobody knows what's going on. And when the deadline comes, the people who submitted their information said, oh, we sent that. Nobody got it. So, and for us to move forward with this project, either way, either we accept it or we don't, we need to ensure that everything is reviewed by the consultant that we hired to do this, and to bring back those recommendations to us. Because the way it stands now, it is unacceptable.
Thank you. It seems to me, if I might, that we really have 3 tasks before us this evening. Number one, we have to either accept or reject the staff recommendation of a 30-day extension. Number two, we have to have a discussion and then a conclusion as to whether or not we want to see market rate housing there or some other kind of housing. And number three, we want to take a look at the reliance on tax credits and whether or not we want to allow the developers to use tax credits for this project. So could we take them one by one and get through them or not? Excuse me, Commissioner Lanier, Mr. McCoy has the floor. You're on now.
I want to understand, how are those our options? How do you arrive at that?
Based on the memo we got today from Mr. Haygood.
Is that in the agenda or is that on the
It's on the agenda.
Okay, so, but if we left with a specific direction and he's coming back with a counter proposal, how is that on the table? Because this
Wait,
is
I'm not understanding you. Who's coming back with another proposal?
So selecting something based on market rate was never discussed before. Now, if you were privy to it because you're a part of the joint committee, that's not something that we...
And that's why, as part of when it was discussed in the joint committee, my feeling was we can't do anything on this market rate versus affordable housing unless it's brought before the entire commission, because it's too important a decision without the input from the rest of the commissioners.
Right, but, okay, so, and I appreciate that and I certainly respect that, but take a step back. The proposal was built off a tax rate, a tax credit, 9% tax credits. 4%, I'm sorry, 4% tax credits. So do we unilaterally, one, I guess, liaison decide that that's what we want to do? Or do we, as a body, say then we now change to...
We have to have that discussion as a body, because it's not right that a small group of one individual and staff members make a decision about changing, or about moving toward market rate housing. It's got to be a conversation by this whole group. Mr. Evans, you're recognized.
But
Madam Chair.
I'm sorry, Mr. Evans. Commissioner Lanier wanted to say something, and then I'll recognize you. Commissioner Lanier.
Yes, I wanted to say, first of all, Madam Chair, if we start talking about market rates versus non-market rates, we are changing the nature of that proposal.
Exactly.
If we are going to do that, then we need to start over again and put the RFP out again, because what we're doing now, if we're having a conversation about anything that is not in that our original RFP, then we are also voting against ourselves in a sense that this is not even in the RFP. The deal was that we were going to review the proposal that the developer sent in. And if that proposal were to be changed, we needed to start over again.
Thank you. Mr. Evans.
We cannot start having conversations. We cannot start having conversations about something that was not in the original proposal.
Mr. Evans.
Because that means that we will be changing that proposal. Second of all, it was 90 days that was given to the developer. It is expired. But we understand now that the developers did send something in. So the only issue here that we have to do is just look forward to the same proposal, giving them 30 days to come back and bring the information back, because having any other discussion other than that, it is going to negate the original proposal.
Mr. Evans.
Madam Chair, the items that were proffered in the memorandum that was provided this evening is questions that the developer asked of staff, and obviously those are substantive questions that we cannot provide real feedback and bind the board without having the discussion. And so if it is the board's desire to grant the 30-day extension and not address the element contained is market rate housing, and there still needs to be perspective with regards to the new market tax credits and the reliability of those as a funding mechanism, as well as clarity provided with regards to the parking, because that is going to be information that the developers would need to put pen to paper to facilitate the analysis that Mr. Fishkind will be reviewing.
So I'll correct my previous statement. We have 4 items then. We have the decision to extend. We have the decision to either approve or not approve market rate housing. We have the decision to rely on tax credits, and we have the conversation about parking. Have I covered everything?
Madam Chair.
Wait, excuse me. Commissioner Miller Anderson has the floor. Oh, parking. And these were questions that came out of the conversations with the developers. We probably have not had enough conversations with the developers, because what we really need is a negotiation that has never quite gotten off the ground. But nonetheless, at this point in time, these are the 4 items that I feel we all have to weigh in on. Commissioner Lanier.
Madam Chair, let us be clear. We're not here to negotiate the original proposal, because if we bring up market rates, if we bring up any of those items, then we are negotiating that proposal. We are negotiating that original RFP. So why are we even having conversation about market rates versus? That is a question for the consultant, meaning that if anything that comes to us or being brought to us that fundamentally changes the nature of the original proposal, then we cannot have any discussion about it. That would those things will fundamentally change the original RFP and the original proposal submitted. That would mean that we are in negotiations now with something that we cannot do. We have to stick to the original proposal and to have conversations about market rate versus any other rate, about conversations that whatever fundamental changes that original RFP, we cannot have conversations about that unless we throw it out and start again.
Mr. Evans.
For the record, the RFP did not,
Thank you.
I'm not finished.
Oh, I'm sorry. You took a breath.
First of all,
Is it possible to bring Councilwoman Lanier on the screen?
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Yeah, is
first
it
of all-
possible to have, it's really hard to say whether Commissioner Lanier is finished speaking without seeing her. Is it possible to put her on the screen? That would be helpful. Oh, you have to turn your camera on, Shirley?
it's on.
There she is. Good. Oh, we see infinite number of Commissioner Lanier's just appeared.
No, I was saying originally
There we go.
that if we're going to have conversations that is going to fundamentally change the original RFP, we cannot do that.
Okay. Can I just respond to that? Can I just okay, go ahead.
Okay, let me finish my
Okay,
conversation.
sorry,
Let me finish
go
what
ahead.
I was going to say. Because we cannot fundamentally change that unless we go back and start over again, then that should not be up for discussion. We cannot have a motion to even talk about housing, what it is, because all of that was in the original RFP. Second of all, the discussion that we need to have now is that the consultant sent in his report saying that there was nothing sent by the developer. We have to concede that he didn't even get it. We have to concede that he did not have an opportunity to review it. That is not on, apparently that's not on the developer, and that's not on Fishkind. He didn't get it from the staff. So what we need to do is just to make sure that Mr. Fishkind gets the information that he needs to be able to review that proposal. And anything else that is going to fundamentally change that proposal needs not to happen unless we start a whole new RFP process.
Madam Chair,
Thank you. You're recognized, Mr.
for the record, the RFP did not specify that it was going to be affordable housing. That was included in the proposal from the developers. And as I said, the proposal does not bind this board to doing what's in the proposal. You can negotiate the proposal, number one. Number two, yes, certain information was not forwarded to Dr. Fishkind from only one of the developers. There was no information submitted from the second developer.
Madam Chair?
Yes. Oh, Mr. Lawson.
Thank you, Madam
You're
Chair.
recognized.
Thank you. And that's where my confusion lied, because I didn't realize that affordable or workforce or market rate housing was incorporated into the original proposal that we received. So I was confused as to why we wouldn't be able to continue that discussion and negotiation. And as we saw today with the presentation and what we've seen with the market over these last 2 years, while we've been here with the new council, that we've experienced a pandemic that's going to change certain dynamics of this proposal to where a 15,000 square feet of retail may not be what we're looking for within the development of that marina site. So having these discussions and negotiations, I think, would be vital to actually making sure the proper development is done, especially with the change of the market. Our only concern with Mr. Fishkind currently is to making sure that there's a financial feasibility from the developer. And I think that part of the team that was put together to address some of the market rates, some of the workforce, and some of the housing that we want to address was to try to make sure it was productive on what we as a DIAS have brought to the staff that we were looking for. But that should, of course, not discredit the team from being able to present the proposals that they have. In addition, I don't think it's much of a discussion if our staff drop the ball and getting the information over to our consultant we hired. I think we do the recommendation of the 30 days and see if that's sufficient time for our team, because essentially we are all working as a team to develop this property instead of making it difficult. Every single one of us are frustrated because we're to a point now where we're still having these same discussions, and as my colleague said, we're on borrowed time. So essentially, I want to make sure that this project can get done quickly, and we have to determine who's going to be the point person and the direct communication so we can hold them accountable, because after all of these meetings, we still seem not to know who is going to be referring or relaying information. So I think it's as simple as executing staff's recommendation of the 30 days and as a DIAS deciding on who is going to be the point person for communication.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Yes, excuse me, Ms. Lanier, Commissioner Lanier, Commissioner Miller Anderson has the floor.
I do agree with what Mr. Lawson is saying. At this point, I mean, we've got some good information tonight, but knowing that this information was not provided to Mr. Fishkind, although I can honestly say I was expecting the 90-day mark, and I think I mentioned this during the time when we approved the 90 days, for it to be the 90 days, but being that there are some situations that have occurred, I am okay with extending the 30 days, but this has been going on a very, very long time. And, you know, it's about time that we figure this out and either move on with them or without them, because it doesn't make any sense to, because doing things like this, I think, is doing us a disservice, because it will hurt us when we want to do other things. We just had this meeting with the Lake Park and talking about doing all these wonderful things on Broadway, but if we can't get something done and done right, that is not going to look well for people that want to come, potentially. So after the 30 days, if we can't figure this out, I mean, I'm just thinking we're going to need to start over. So in talking about the other items, if it's appropriate to do it tonight, fine. If not, then we can do that at another time. But we need to figure something out and get that done so we can move to the next step.
Thank you, Mr. McCoy, recognized. Mr. McCoy, well, she's spoken a couple of times already. Go ahead, Mr. McCoy. Commissioner Lanier, I'm just going to let other people have an opportunity, and then I'll call on you again. Commissioner McCoy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm okay with that, but, you know, Mr. Fishkind's analysis seems pretty harsh every time I read it. It almost seems as if they're geared to specifically say no, and I'm curious, Mr. Jonathan Evans, Mr. Scott Evans, Mr. Michael Haygood, has he read the original proposal, request for proposal that was put out? Did he read the original responses? Did he read the joint responsibles that the body directed him to come back with? Because I think it's quite honestly disingenuous to make those kind of remarks and they be forwarded to us by email when it's somebody on our staff's part that didn't even send it to them. And nothing about any of those things suggested market realities. It's what a proposer, what a developer believes is going to be beneficial to them. The negotiation comes in when, if there's a different position, then let the body determine that. I don't even know who Hank Fishkind or Hank Fish, whatever, but still, you know, I'm like, why are we doing this? I literally seen in this proposal, and it's embarrassing, if our CRA budget completely is more than the whole entire town of Lake Park, this one individual is going to sit here and tell me what's best for my community, and I can guarantee you he's never even crossed into the city limits. Does he know what the market calls for? I asked some very specific questions of Ms. Ramasso, who's the planning director, about who constituted the market analysis to know exactly what the housing demand is. But if he wants to give me some top-level scrutiny about it, then at least come to Riviera Beach, at least have some independent housing analysis, and I just don't appreciate it. We are on borrowed time, and I don't want to sit here and allow somebody to, again, if I can quote from that article, to pigeonhole just not the developers but us. And as far as I'm concerned, there was a very important reason why I asked for Mr. Hager's item to be taken second, because somebody owes the members of this body a responsibility of explaining it. And there's no way I'm going to approve a $17,000 invoice for an attorney who should have been the intermediary, and then we get hit with an email right before the meeting started and said, oh, I'm sorry, he didn't even get that. After it's already been published in a public agenda that suggests
these people did not do what they had to do. And I was very much adamant that that was not fair to us as members of this body, nor to the developers. Should we ask for people to come here? I would think, and I'm going to be damn serious, somebody needs to stop this half-ass work that's going on in this CRA, in this city, and get up to it. If not, the door is open, and it swings both ways. I yield back.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Commissioner Lanier, you're recognized.
First, Mr. Fishkind was selected from a international firm, 30-year experience. He has the gentleman has the credentials to make these decisions. That is the reason why we hired him. We hired him because of these complex development deals, his 30 years of experience, and setting up a whole program at UCF about these type of deals is someone that we wanted to be able to look at what we were doing to give us the right and the best advice. Second of all, the man wrote the report based on the fact that he did not receive anything from the developer, and he made that clear. So you can't blame Mr. Fishkind for not having what he needed to have to be able to review and give recommendations. And I still say that is what we need to do. That is the reason why we brought him here. That is the reason why we are asking him for his recommendations, is to be able to review this proposal and to make sure if we or the developer has the wherewithal to move this project forward. And if we don't, then we need to start over. And if we do, then we can move forward. But either way, we need to be able to be advised by an expert in this area so that we don't get down the road and have regrets about how we move forward with this project. So the thing about it is that we cannot get to this point and try and cut out the consultant because he didn't get the information that he was supposed to receive. But what we need to do is that we need to provide the gentleman, provide him, the consultant, with the information that he needs. It's just that simple. That is what he's been asking for during the whole entire 3 months. Provide the information to me. I can review. I can send it back to the city. They can know what the recommendations are from this expert and from this this firm that has the expertise in doing this type of work.
Mr. McCoy, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioner Lynn, I disagree because he sent us a memo that suggested that the proposal should come back to reflect market realities. And I'm saying to myself, absent of a study of the market, how is it that he's able to unilaterally, as an economist that should just be looking at due diligence, be able to determine that the proposal that was presented before us don't reflect the market realities? And very simply, he doesn't have that capability of doing that, absent. And then if you actually were a part of our meeting, REIM did it for the town of Lake Park, and they knew exactly that there is a market for 3,000 single family, 3,000 units within the area, not specific to Lake Park. But absent of that, he can't sit around and just unilaterally, because he's an economist, say what the market demands without a market study. And that's the whole thing that I'm saying, coupled with the fact that now the information that's been presented, he's basically saying that that doesn't fit. Well, economists don't exactly create a study to determine what the market can bear, especially in Riviera Beach. So, Madam Chair, if nothing else, I move that we accept staff recommendation to give the extension, and I would like to see I move to see if we can accept that extension, and I would like to reserve for another motion.
Thank you. Would someone care to second that motion?
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Madam Clerk?
Commissioner McCoy?
Yes.
Commissioner Lanier?
No.
Commissioner Miller-Anderson?
Yes.
Vice Chair Lawson?
Yes.
Chair Botel?
Yes. That motion is approved with a 4-to-1 vote. And now, shall we move on to the other topics that we need to discuss? Mr. McCoy, you're recognized.
Prior to the invoice,
members, I would like to see if there's going to be a more fluid process as to the communication. I do not want us for the third time to come back and say somebody didn't get the right information. Mr. CRA Executive Director, do you have any idea how we can facilitate this so there's not a disconnect in communication for a third time?
Sure, Councilman. As previously stated and as requested by myself to this board, I would like to take the project lead responsibilities to facilitate the bringing this item to closure and bringing it to a resolution and the analysis being concluded. I think it's only pertinent that we move in that direction and allow for me to take on the responsibilities if it's so desired by the board.
Thank you. Mr. McCoy?
I would be okay with that. My only caveat is I would ask that our appointee to the joint committee, at least if it's during our city council meeting, to give us an update, because it seems like to me we wait 4 months and then 2 days before the meetings we get hit with and bombarded with all these emails about a miscommunication. I just need regular communication because this does not work. And I'm almost embarrassed to know that. I looked at their, I think it was August 18th to May 2019, they were able to put together a whole entire plan.
Yeah.
And we got to do better.
Yeah.
And,
So,
and I don't know if, you know, I can't, I guess I can't micromanage this, but I don't know where Mr. Fishkine's role is, if it's the due diligence of the finances or telling us what's best, and if it's not based on any kind of substantial research, because, and I'm an accountant, and I did do micro and macro economy, but that looks at the economy. That's not specific to markets. That's not specific to what the area demographics is. That's not specific to the AMI. But I need to make sure that I'm not getting a memo from some consultant who's never even been in the city limits to tell me what he thinks is best for an area that lives up there. I need something a little more that represents what the area from the intercoastal back to the railroad tracks, what that demands, because that's not representative of every community throughout where Mr. Fishkind, and I hope you're listening, Mr. Fishkind, because my number is 827-0365, and I don't make any bones about it. But I'm literally tired of going back and forth with some completely surprising information that you get 2 days before the meeting, and I see it's met with a bunch of faults and a bunch of misstatements and inaccuracies. And I think that's not fair because, again, you make, Mr. Evans, Mr. Scott Evans, Mr. Jonathan Evans, I want to get a complete report of what we spent on Mr. Hank Fishkind since we've started this project. I yield back, Madam Chair.
thank you. Mr. Evans, you're recognized.
Madam Chair, with regards to some of the items that were discussed, I will, and I have the contact information for the representatives from RMA that was expressed by Lake Park, and I will look to see about the possibility of entertaining them for a limited engagement to assist in reviewing the elements concerning the housing and the environment and the conditions as it relates to the information that they were able to collect in Lake Park and what information that is applicable to us, because I think that's important information as we look to have further discussions about densities and intensities and the like. And so if that information is readily available, certainly I will pass it on to the development group as well as share it with the board once that's obtained. But I will reach out to them first part of the day tomorrow.
Thank you. But
Madam Chair?
I have a question first, please. Do we need to give you advice about what the commission feels regarding market rate housing, regarding the tax credits, regarding the parking? Is that something that you feel that you still need from us to move forward?
I think the action that the board took was to grant the 30-day
Right.
extension. If the board chooses to provide clarity to that, certainly it would be something that would be part of the final submission by the developer. But if the board chooses to have the analysis done exclusively on what was proposed, and I believe that's what was the action that may have been contemplated that the board just took, then those items will be left outstanding, and then we would discuss that as part of the next phase, which would be the negotiation phase after the financial analysis is complete.
Exactly. Madam Chair?
You're recognized. Commissioner O'Neill.
Yes, I agree with that analysis, because what we're doing at this point is that we're reviewing a proposal that was sent in based on an RFP that was submitted, and to have conversations, which means that we're basically having negotiations about what can and cannot be put into a proposal now. The proposal has been submitted. I don't understand why we're trying to change it, why we're trying to add more things to it. And Mr. Fishkind was a part of the original process of making sure that the developers were financially sound in order to do this project. And if we have Mr. Evans as the point person along with Mr. Fishkind to be able to get through this first phase of it, if we're going to negotiate, that is a part of a second or a third phase. That is not a part of what we're doing now. What we're doing now is that what the proposal that was submitted will be reviewed by a consultant for the financial soundness of it, and we will move forward. But to sit here and, number one, disparage the consultant because he didn't have the information, it's ludicrous. The man was responding based on what he received, and he received nothing. So that is why he wrote his report the way he did, based on the fact that he received it. So when we are having these discussions, I'm not finished. When we're having these discussions, we are in this first phase of this. This is a phase where we're looking at the original proposal, and we're trying to make sure that that original proposal is financially sound. And then we move forward. But we cannot bring in all these other things so that, and then now it convolutes the issue of the financial solubility of it. We need to work on one thing at a time and make sure that they are financially sound, then we move forward. If they're not financially sound, then we need to move elsewhere.
I finished. Mr. McCoy,
Yes.
recognized.
Two things, Madam Chair.
Your mic is off.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Two things. First, I want to offer a motion to relieve Mr. Fishkind of his duties as consultant, because clearly he's not consulting on the nature of the proposal, and it seems to be fruitless at this point. We've been through 2 times, and that is my motion.
I want a second for discussion, Madam Chair.
This motion is moved and seconded, and let's have discussion.
Madam Chair.
You recognize Mr. Lawson.
Question in reference to the proposal. Mr. Fishkind made a recommendation that market rate housing be implemented or discussed. Is my question to either Mr. Haygood or Mr. Evans.
Mr. Evans.
I don't think
He didn't.
Dr. Fishkind did put anything with regards to recommending that market rate housing. He specified the type of, in totality, what type of housing within a certain window of opportunities, the same way he articulated it as it relates to square footage for commercial space and the like, but I don't think he went as far as saying that market rate housing was something that is to be considered as part of the proposal. That was something in conversations and discussions, and based on what staff gleaned from discussions that we've had with the board, that may be an additional tool to consider, especially with waterfront property that would be available.
Okay. So did Mr. Fishkind complete a housing market analysis?
I can't speak on the specificities of what Mr. Fishkind's analysis was or the process in which he derived what his recommendations were. What we have done is we've provided him with the information, and based on whatever tools are at his disposal, he generates the report with no input or modifications as may be proffered by staff. So his report is completely independent, and we have kept it as such because of the fact that we wanted to make sure that he's the subject matter expert and the person that was hired for the purposes of concluding the analysis. So we haven't provided any editorial marks or any changes or any modifications to his report. His report is generated solely by him and then submitted to us for the purposes of distribution.
And that was, to that point, Mr. Evans, that was my question about the housing market analysis, because him being the expert, and to one of my colleagues' points, that him knowing or not knowing the housing market is a concern for me here without actually having that analysis brought to the table. So essentially, his recommendation or thoughts of going against what the proposal brought, which I believe was workforce housing, is what the original proposal that came from this joint team, had nothing to do with market rate. So I'm not really sure why market rate came into the discussion for Mr. Fiskine, if that's that's not the direction he was given to analyze this proposal. So contrary to the belief that he is an expert in the field when it comes to the economics, I do have an issue with the housing aspect that was not actually researched, or we don't have the information or documentation in front of us. I would also ask my colleagues to entertain a discussion, because I'm asking, why is Mr. Fishkin not available for comment tonight during this meeting? Mr. Evans.
Mr. Evans, and then Mr. McCoy.
I had a follow-up, Madam Chair, to that as well.
I'm sorry, Mr. Lawson, what did you say?
I had a follow-up to the question as to why Mr. Fishkin was not available for comment tonight.
Could we have a response to Mr. Lawson's question, and he has a follow-up?
Certainly. The original submission, once Mr. Fishkin concluded his report that he thought was final, he provided a correspondence to Mr. Haygood that he contained everything that needed to be provided for in his report, and the report stands on its own, and didn't feel it necessary for him to be in attendance, and didn't want to create for a situation that creates additional consternation or angst. He said he just wanted to provide the report, and the report speaks for itself, and that he would entertain any phone calls or conversations with elected officials in the event that there was any questions on the original report. Once he did receive the information that was provided today, the report was withdrawn because it was incomplete and inconclusive, so he's reviewing that data, and if the extension is granted, then he will conduct his final report and analysis and then deliver it accordingly.
So, Mr. Evans, to that point, unfortunately, sitting as the elected officials, I have to deal with the conflict, with the angst, and the uncomfortable way of dealing with concerns of the residents, concerns of staff, and what's happening. So, Mr. Fishkin taking on the ability to not participate in tonight's meeting because he didn't want to create any additional tension to a project that is going to be the largest project we've seen in the city is not really acceptable to me, in the fact that he chose not to come when understanding there's additional documentation and information. So being that we do have one of the participants of this project, I would ask my colleagues to see if we can entertain a short discussion with the sitting partners, because we're essentially the representatives that are going to be negotiating with this team that's trying to invest $200 million into our city. So I would love to actually hear from them in reference to what's happening with this communication, if my colleagues would entertain that.
Thank you. If there's no objection, do you have any objection? Commissioner Miller Anderson, do you have any objection?
I'm sorry.
Do you have any objection to hearing from the developers?
No, I don't.
Good.
Yes,
but-
I have objections from hearing from the developers because the consultant is not here. Why would we hear from the developers?
He chose
What
not to be
Mr.
here.
Fishkin,
He chose not
hold
to.
on, Madam Chair. What Mr. Fishkin was charged to do was two things. He was supposed to determine if the developers can financially support this project, and number two, whether what they're proposing is going to be feasible. That was it. He did not receive anything from these developers in terms of making that determination. And to hear from the developers when we have not even completed the analysis of their proposal is ludicrous at this point. Why are we hearing, what needs to happen is that they need to present to Mr. Fishkind. They need to present to someone who is going to be analyzing what their proposal is. What are we hearing from them at this point?
Madam Chair?
We don't, I'm not finished. We don't need to negotiate before it is determined if the developer has any financial capacity and the development is feasible. So why are we having these discussions with the developer? Why are we having these, we keep going back and forth? There were two things that were very simple that had to be done. Can they afford to do this project? And is this project feasible for Riviera Beach? And if they have not given the information to Mr. Fishkind, or Mr. Fishkind has not received it, then everything else is moot at this point, because why are we having this conversation when it has not even been analyzed?
Mr. Lawson and then Mr. McCoy.
Madam Chair, to the point, and Councilwoman Lanier, the reason that we're going to hear from the developers tonight, if it's the pleasure of the board, is because Mr. Fishkind had every ability to come speak to this council. He's already collected his check and given his report. Once advised that there was missing information, he had the ability to come to speak to the council. Ultimately, regardless of his recommendation or not, we're going to make the final decision. So thank you, Mr. Fishkind, for collecting a check from the city, for providing your due diligence and support to the city. But I want to hear from the individuals that are putting their money up to invest into the city, and the ones that are here tonight that actually took the time to meet with the council that have not received. I'm not finished, Councilwoman Lanier.
Commissioner Lanier,
Councilwoman Lanier, thank you.
Commissioner Lawson has the floor.
Order, Madam Chair.
Commissioner Lanier, Commissioner Lawson has the floor. It seems to me, if I might, Commissioner Lawson, that we have consensus from this body to hear from the developers. If we could call either Mr. Brown or Mr. Saffold to the microphone. I think a number of us have questions we'd like to have answered. I, for one, do. Mr. Lawson,
Thank you, Madam
still
Chair.
have the floor.
Yes, we can continue. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair, members of the board, hello. My name is Tony Brown. I'm the managing partner for TESRA. As I begin to address some of the questions raised, I think it's important that I explain the relationship that TESRA has with APD Solutions. We did not propose, when you asked us to come together, we did not propose a joint venture. We proposed a co-development. And in that co-development partnership, we each separated our responsibilities. TESRA is responsible for the parking, the housing, and together with APD, we are going to do the hotel, and then APD is responsible for everything else. So the reason why APD made its submission, it submitted on the elements that it's responsible for. Since September, we've asked for clarification to Dr. Fishkind's memo. We are negotiating by memo, and we're being directed to follow Dr. Fishkind's memo in order to present our financial requirements. So the first clarification we sought is the housing product that we propose is workforce housing. It is market rate housing that has an affordable set-aside in order to attract tax credits. The affordable set-aside says that at least 20% of the units has to be affordable for low-income residents, for people whose income does not exceed $53,000 here in Palm Beach County. Now, market rate in Riviera Beach is different than market rate in Boca. So our market rate product that we have run our financials on is for our apartment units to be affordable for families whose income is between $100,000 and $53,000. Now, if this body thinks that we can attract a market whose household income exceeds $253,000 or condos in Lake Park that will sell for $1 million, all we requested was, let's do a housing study. Dr. Fishkind is a reputable economist. I have a 40-year background in banking and finance, and so in complying with Dr. Fishkind's requirements, we simply asked, as he said, present your proposal steeped in market reality, and we said workforce housing, not affordable, workforce housing, does have an affordable element at minimum of 20% of units. So we sought that clarification from you as terms of what housing product do you want us to project. Also in Dr. Fishkine's memo, and he says specifically, even though the tax credit is a worthy pursuit, that your ability to bring capital should not be based on tax credits. Well, you know my background. I am a community development finance expert. This facility that you're sitting in was financed with New Market's tax credits because your community wanted a 2-story Newcomb Hall that our budget could not afford, so we leveraged it with tax credits. In 2 years, KeyBank's investment of $1.7 million in this facility goes away. It's free money to this city. That's what New Market's tax credit do. That's what low-income housing tax credit do. It provides a subsidy to attract investments into low-income communities like Riviera Beach. The tax credit is a benefit to attract capital. So when Dr. Fishkine said, present your proposal without tax credits steeped in market reality, what he's saying is you should present a housing plan where your equity comes from non-subsidized sources. That is not what we propose. Yes, we responded to the RFP, and our response to the RFP says we're going to do workforce housing and that we're going to raise our equity through tax credits. KeyBank, Fifth Third Bank, U.S. Bank, those are the folks who invest in the projects that I've done throughout the United States. The other thing in Dr. Fishkine's memo that we're directed to comply with, he says that your financial commitments cannot have conditions. Well, even if I bought a firm commitment, it's going to have conditions to close. There is no way that I can present to you a proposal from my equity investor, from my debt investor, whose conditions, whose willingness to lend me money to invest in our project is going to be without conditions. We did not propose to self-fund this. We proposed a strategy taking advantage of this market opportunity to raise our equity through institutions who would take risk in this market using tax credits. And so our clarification was that we wanted to make sure that in responding to Dr. Fishkine's memo, as I said, we're negotiating by memo, that what we submitted would not automatically be disqualified. And that's simply what we're asking. We're not changing our proposal. It was workforce development. We indicated that we would raise our equity through tax credits. I have a $10 billion track record of raising money through tax credits, by example of this facility here in Riviera Beach. So it's not whether or not I can do it, it's whether or not we go through the process of underwriting a transaction that makes you proud that we can do. And I know how important it is for you to see development. And we're just asking for the right clarification so that when we present our information, we're not disqualified. Thank you.
Madam Chair?
You're recognized, Mr. Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Mr. Brown, I'm going to just have a few questions for you, but just colleagues and staff, this is why Lake Park spent 1.5 years working with a consultant to prepare prior to having these discussions with the developers. Because right now we're pigeonholed into working in an environment where they have to work with our current zoning. They have to work with our current environment that we have. They don't have the ability to go up with those intensities and densities to attract the proper development and the finance that's needed. So that's why they can have a 5-story parking garage and 22-story condos on their waterfront, because they took that time to actually develop their downtown plan, update their land density planning and their zoning, and allow for the right development to come in. Right now, we have an organization that's come to the table that came through an RFP that was actually asked by, I believe, Madam Chair Botel, to come together as partners. They took that on, they took that initiative and came together to bring a package to our city. Now, our concern is, can they afford to actually do this project? That's where we brought in Mr. Fishkind. Now, there seems to be some changes and variances into what our expectations are in regards to workforce and market rate housing. But I really think that we just need to be creative and be open-minded and make sure that we get this project done, or get a project done, because again, I'm going to quote again my colleague that said we are on borrowed time. We've been here, and I've been sitting here for 19 months, And the most we've seen developed in this community is a tear down of a fire station. I need to see some progress done. We, of course, do not want to rush or expedite anything that's not going to be the right development for our community, but we have the opportunity to make a decision based upon what our shareholders in our community, our businesses, our residents, and our community leaders want to see in this community and get something developed. So, colleagues, whatever the decision is, if we're going to wait this 30 days, let's go ahead and make sure that we have an open mind. And I agree wholeheartedly with allowing for Mr. Evans to take the lead on this, because I believe Mr. Jonathan Evans will be the point person in getting the proper communication done and has an open and creative mind with getting this project done, knowing that the direction of this board and dais is to get something done. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Mr. McCoy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sorry, I stepped out. I had a call from the House. So aside from, and I don't know if this is even fruitless to address Commissioner Lanier, but I'm looking at the exact September 3rd, 2020 memorandum from Hank Fishkind to J. Michael Haygood. And it basically, and I'm going to give you a really brief one, revised the proposed plan to reflect market realities. So that clearly suggests that for some reason he didn't think that that was a good idea, even after the body accepted that. Additionally, obtain adequate equity capital to support the plan. Fund the parking garage without city support. That was just two of the few, but I guess more importantly, if this is, it seems that there's some misguidedness by, and I don't want to make this assumption, but was Mr. Fishkind provided with the proposals and the RFP? And if he was, how is it that it's proper for him to then go back and suggest that in order for this to work in his mind, that he's going to tell the proposers to do something that was outside of what the scope of what the proposal was, and not only that, of what the submittal was, because that's materially, and we're responsible as the CRA for the actual execution that what is being required is consistent with what was proposed. Was he privy to that, Mr. Haygood?
I can't answer your second question. He was provided with all the material.
Okay, but from a practical standpoint, can he unilaterally, as a consultant, tell us an alternative of financing, even though we've accepted this proposal as a body? Aside from negotiations, can he go back and change some of the very fundamental elements of what the financing model should be?
Well, he was hired by the board. We did not give him directions. We gave him the material. As far as accepting proposal, there's never been a formal acceptance by this board of any proposal.
Oh, no. Oh, really?
Really.
I beg to differ. I'll take you back to the meeting where there was, in Councilwoman Miller Anderson, also Chair Botel, specifically accepted and directed a joint proposal. So, and then that was accepted.
No, the proposal has never been formally accepted. They asked them to go back and negotiate and bring something back, and then we have been going through this process. But you have never formally accepted a proposal, a joint proposal, any other proposals.
Right, but how is it that we, and this goes back to the fundamental question that I asked first, me, Troderick McCoy, Michael Hager, Jonathan Evans, Scott Evans can tell them that their proposal is not good enough, lacking any kind of housing study to say that this is not even proper, that this won't even work?
We staff never told them that.
Okay, well then, there we go. So I'm going to renew my motion to relinquish Mr. Fishkind of his duties, because, like, I'm not playing this game. I'm not playing this game, and Mr. Haygood, I'm really, at some point, highly disappointed, because, like, the last meeting we had, it was about communication. We were quoted in the Palm Beach Post because somebody didn't communicate. Mr. Haygood, we left it at you,
And now I got a $17,000 invoice that's on the agenda to approve, but somebody needs to be held accountable. 2020 has not been the best year for anybody, but what I will say, before we end this year, there are some people that's going to be held accountable and responsible. We don't make all of this, Mr. Haygood, 17 grand. I don't hardly make that in a year in the city.
We can talk about that separately. That's not what we're discussing
Well,
now.
I'm just telling you, the mere fact that you sent us an email
Could we
today
please, excuse me, can we
that
please have
said
a calm
that there was a
discussion?
mistake on your part, what I don't have time is to waste. We're on borrowed time, and Mr. Haygood, Mr. Evans, Mr. Jonathan Evans, Mr. Scott Evans, somebody needs to figure it out. So I'm going to renew my motion that we terminate Mr. Fishkind and relinquish him of his duties.
Motion's on the table.
We've
It's
had
already been
that,
seconded.
that motion has been made and seconded, and we've been discussing sort of tangential items, but does anyone have other comments about Mr. Fishkind's removal? Commissioner Miller Anderson.
Yes, I just wanted to know, so if we go that route, where does that put us? And are we, how much time are we'll have to find someone else and start over again? And, I mean, somebody help me figure that out?
Mr. Evans.
Madam Chair, what we can possibly do is reach out to, a couple options. One, we can sever the relationship with PFM and bring on a different consultant, or ask for PFM to assign a different person in their firm to provide the financial analysis.
And then that would delay us even more to, I said that would delay us even more.
That will delay us more.
Certainly.
Mr. McCoy.
Well, Madam Chair, I want to modify to relinquish Mr. Hank Fishkind and PFM and anyone associated with it, because there still seems to be some related party transaction. And clearly, I don't want somebody picking apart or telling me what they think is best when it wasn't even based on the proposal that was sitting in front of me. So if we need to go to REM or the firm that was chosen by the town of Lake Park, but quite honestly, if what's good for the gander is good for the goose, if we set and allow Pinnacle to go just not even 3/4 of a mile down the street, is this something that's so much that we need to, because these tax credits are based on the application and obviously a grant of it, but is this something that, and I'm going to ask the manager, that we need to really engage someone for financial due diligence when it's based on a submittal of tax credits? Because if it doesn't come through, then they have to find some other financing mechanism, and it's not really based on a joint venture that just got put together that wouldn't have a specific track record.
Madam Chair, if I may,
Yes.
with regards to the process, I certainly think it would be fiscally prudent for us to have someone that has that expertise to evaluate if in fact what is being proposed can occur with the funding structure that's being proffered. So certainly we would have to entertain and look for somebody that has that expertise, which invariably will take some time, as well as them having to look at the litany of documents and the correspondence, as well as facilitating conversations with the developers to get a better understanding and a better handle on their particular project. But certainly deviating from the relationship from PFM would require us to take a little bit of time to find someone that we can bring on board, depending on what their cost for services is. If it's under the $25,000 threshold, then certainly that's something that I can enter into an arrangement with them for the purposes of facilitating that. But I won't know until I start making the phone calls and the inquiries if the board wants to go in that direction.
Mr. McCoy.
Follow up.
Thank you.
Mr. McCoy, you recognize.
So, Mr. Evans, your suggestion, is that the same mechanism or process we would have and chose for Pinnacle or even HTG when we pledged, what was it, $750,000 or $640,000? Whether or not that their plan was palatable, even though we only contributed $640,000? Because we certainly didn't engage anyone.
Madam Chair, with respect to the relationship with Pinnacle and the project that came before for the 9% tax credit program, the risk to the agency was very minimal because it's such a competitive process, and there is certainly other entities, and you have to get approval through the state to effectuate, the final end product. There was no land or transaction or a relationship that was memorialized to the degree of this particular project. So I see them separate and apart because it's a different relationship. This is actually CRA property, city property, and there's multiple nuances associated with this. And the local participation with regards to the Pinnacle project was to facilitate a favorable application to go through the Florida Finance Corporation. So one of the other things you have to also consider, if we do go for the 4% tax credit program, that is something that we would go through the similar process that we went with Pinnacle, but you would basically guarantee that the local participation, local support would be from the city, obviously, because of the properties that would be utilized to effectuate the development. So they're different, but there are some similarities in certain elements to it.
Mr. McCoy, you done?
Yes, thank you.
Mr. Lawson?
Madam Chair.
Oh, I'm sorry. Commissioner Lanier, let me have you go first, and then Mr. Lawson.
No, Lawson said first.
Did he say first? Okay, sorry. Commissioner
I think
Lanier, I'm being told that...
come.
Okay, Commissioner Lanier,
She
you're
can go.
recognized.
That's fine.
Okay, I just wanted to say that, first of all, the new markets tax credits are basically past due now. That's the first thing. The second thing, if we are having an attempt to get rid of Mr. Fishkind, then you can kiss the 30 days out the door. The council members are steadily saying that they want to see something move forward, they want to see something happen, but to change in midstream with the developer or with a consultant that you already have on staff who is already familiar with this project, who has gotten the information from the city and the CRA about this project and has reviewed some of the documents from the developer thus far, is to throw this back out for another 90 to 120 days to be able to come up with some type of recommendation. And of course, as I will repeat again, the recommendation is basically two things: to see if this developer is financially feasible to be able to do this project, and to make sure that the project is feasible for the city to be able to engage in. It's very simple. I don't know why this is becoming so difficult. It's becoming so blown out of proportion. But in fact, all it is two simple things: to find out if the developer is financially ready to do the project, and to also see if it's feasible for the city of Riviera Beach. It's two simple issues. The consultant did not get the information from the developer. He could not proffer a report because of that. And now we're in the middle of trying to get rid of the consultant because of something he did not even have. The consultant that we have on board is a consultant who has 2 publicly traded firms in real estate, so he knows housing. But the issue now is not even housing. The issue is the proposal that was submitted. Is it financially feasible for them to be able to do that project? And do they have the money to do it? And the second part of it is it feasible for it to be done in the city of Riviera Beach? It's two simple issues. And we're going back and forth with this. Now we said we're going to give them another 30 days to bring in the information to the consultant. They can review it. Mr. Jonathan Evans is serving as an intermediary to bring back the information to us. I don't see how simple, more simple you can get than that. This is getting way out of hand in terms of, trying to make something that is not. We have been doing this, this was on the table before we, 19 months ago, even came as city council members. And we're still having this conversation about this project because all we want is two simple things. Is the developer in a financial position to do it? And is the project that they're proposing feasible for the city of Riviera Beach? It is just that simple.
Mr. Lawson.
I yield my time, Madam Chair.
Any other comments about this motion? The motion has been made and seconded to, could you repeat what the final version of your motion was? Relieve Mr. Hank Fishkind and PFM of their responsibilities for any further work.
Correct.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
I apologize. I do have a question.
go ahead.
Thank you. Mr. Evans, the process of procurement for RMA, in the event that we were able to piggyback off of the Lake Park projects with RMA, would the proposal or the piggybacking of that procurement have to be a similar or like process proposal, RFP that they put out for consulting, or would we be able to make edits to that RFP that they did?
We conceivably would have to accept it based on the existing contract and what the scope of services are as communicated in the document with the town of Lake Park.
Okay. And from my understanding, that proposal with RMA was similar to based on land use, zoning, densities, and intensities. I'm not sure if they would be inclined to do the same type of financial analysis that we have Mr. Fishkind currently doing.
Without having conversation with them, it would be hard for me to speak on
Right.
that.
And essentially, the procurement, if over 25,000, has to go out for a RFP.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, my understanding of RMA is that they really helped with, they did not necessarily help Lake Park with the financial aspects. As a matter of fact, I found an email in May 8th of 2018, I asked that the city of Riviera Beach take a look at using RMA as a consultant to help us with our zoning because I was so impressed with the work they had done in Lake Park. So much for that. In any case, we have a motion on the floor to relieve. I do have one other question before you vote on this. If we were to remove Hank Fishkind and PFM from of their relieve them of their responsibilities, they would not even take a look at whatever submission happens in the next 30 days. And we just voted to give these developers an additional 30 days, and you're saying you don't want Hank Fishkind to even look at whatever they propose. Is that right? Is that what that's your motion? That you don't even want him to finish up this part of it? Right.
No,
Okay.
ma'am.
Madam Clerk, unless there are any other comments. Madam Clerk?
Commissioner McCoy?
Yes.
Commissioner Lanier?
No.
Commissioner Miller Anderson?
Yes.
Vice Chair Lawson?
Yes.
Chair Botel?
Yes.
That motion carries.
That motion was passed by a vote of 4 to 1.
Follow up.
Mr. McCoy?
So, Mr. Evans, the very concept that we're not really Mr. Jonathan Evans, the very concept that we're not looking at anything beyond tax credits and not a whole lot of market rate, is this something that you and your staff are able to engage in, not memorandum exchange, but meetings to discuss what is a part of the negotiations? Or is this something that you think, from your position, is better suited from getting some outside consultant?
I think because of the complexity and the sophistication associated with the financing structure, I think it is only prudent that we obtain someone that has that expertise to accommodate, the analysis and the review of the proposals.
It seemed that I seen a head nod from Mr. Scott Evans. Is that your? Was that a head nod?
I would agree with Mr. Evans.
Okay, and you, Mr. Haygood? Okay. All right. Well, I understand that, and then I would like that we move on.
While we have these gentlemen here, I would like a better understanding, if you will indulge me, colleagues, I'd like a better understanding of the tax credit issue. I know, because I took a little course offered by Anita Jenkins and the CRA about 2 years ago in financing of housing and so forth, using tax credits. All that went in 1 year. No, it didn't. I retained a lot of it. One thing that I do remember from it is that the 9% tax credits are highly competitive, and that, as we know from our recent meetings with the people who wanted to do the developments on Broadway, you can only have one maybe in a year. So, but would you explain, for the benefit of my colleagues and the public watching, the difference between the 4% and the 9% tax credits?
So the 4% tax credit is not competitive.
Okay.
You raise less equity, and so you look at other costs like land, parking, and the other things that may have to help come with the subsidy. But the 4% tax credit is what they call a non-competitive program. And so we built one financial model based on the 4% tax credit program. And so the conversation that we'll have with staff about parking, about whether or not we buy the land, lease the land at market rate or below market rate, will all determine how feasible the 4% program is. 9% is much better. But when we submitted, because of my history in this community, we felt that you wanted to see something sooner than later. And we didn't propose going beyond current zoning, 8 stories, and we proposed looking at a model that would do the 4% tax credits because we are aware that the 9% program is also very competitive. You didn't ask me about New Markets tax credits. There's 2 ways to get New Markets tax credits. One through the Riviera Beach CDE that I created. Riviera Beach could apply and hopefully win its own tax credits and could be very patient with the allocation. Or we could call on folks who have won in this last round $5 billion to see if they would finance our project. This project, our project, was in the pipeline for the Black Business Investment Forum in Orlando that just recently won $36 million. They have pledged to finance my project in Tallahassee, but because we're not ready here in Riviera Beach, I had to step out of line. So whether Riviera Beach apply for its own tax credits, there are others who probably would like to do some aspect of what we propose. And coincidentally, I supervise the rulemaking for that program. So I know the national players. So the finding someone that might want to invest in our community is not far-fetched if the economic analysis makes sense. And so we have to talk about the land, the infrastructure, and the parking, and what you, the city, may or may not do. And if we can't earn through it, then that's a discussion for another day.
I really would like to hear from my colleagues about their feelings with regard to market rate. And it's interesting that you define market rate differently for Riviera Beach than for other surrounding, more affluent, perhaps, communities. And I think the question that we had in our last meeting with the task force was, because this is the last bit of waterfront, basically waterfront, not the last bit, but it's a good bit of waterfront property there, is this something that we should consider having more expensive housing there? But could we do a mix of slightly more expensive and then
Short answer is yes.
Okay.
In banking terms, we use what we call similarly situated. Even though you have a waterfront property looking east, when you look north and south, you have a working waterfront. You have a port, you have a manufacturing base. So unlike a pristine area, right, where they might be developing on land, or when you look west, you might see a golf course. So even though it's waterfront, and Spanish Courts is blocked by the water tower, so you end up having to go up probably 5 stories before you see a water view. And so it's not to take disadvantage of the location, but even though it's waterfront, is it similarly situated? Is it walkable? If I decide I want to walk the dog, ride my bike, Am I willing to go Broadway, Avenue E and make that circle, or go over the bridge to Singer Island? So there are a lot of elements to come in to what your vision is for the residential community you want to create. And we don't like to use the term gentrification, right? But if the desire is, and as an economic development, community development person, that there is a benefit of having mixed income residents, because then you can attract grocery stores and other community amenities. But when a retailer looks at this census tract and go a mile west, because the water is a barrier, so they go a mile or two west, they are looking at census data that is low and very low income. And so they make an assumption on affordability. When you buy a house and they do an appraisal, even though you're buying a 1,500 square foot house, they are evaluating that house based on the neighborhood, not what a 1,500 square foot house will sell in West Palm Beach or Jupiter. It's what is selling in the neighborhood. So market rate on the west side of this intercoastal is probably most comparable to Marina Grande. And if you've been in Marina Grande, you know it's a fortress to get in. So you can't really do a Marina Grande product on public property that has public elements. And then other rental elements is usually probably something that's along Lakeshore or Wilma Circle. That's what's driving the market. But you can change it, but you're going to change it with a significant investment. And the best example I can use is former Mayor Mike Brown, whose investment for the waterfront talked about redevelopment all the way to Barack Obama Highway, because that was the bodacious vision for creating a mixed income community. But we all know that that was also going to displace low-income residents, and that became controversial. So I stand here before you to say, whatever your vision is, we can see if we can deliver it, and if we can't, we'll get out your way.
Madam Chair.
You recognize Mr. Lawson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A few things that Mr. Brown stated was the development or gentrification, development without displacement. We have to really be cautious of our residents. That's why I would want us as a council to instruct Mr. Evans to immediately look at the RFP that was put out by the town of Lake Park and see if we could piggyback on working with RMA on developing our CRA corridor. Because what they did is they did an amazing job with developing certain areas that didn't impact or disenfranchise our residents. And that consulting agreement that they had with the city, which took about 1.5 years, could possibly take us anywhere between 6 and 8 months if we implemented that immediately. The first thing. And then, Mr. Brown, the second thing, one of the things that we discussed was a mix of the housing and the workforce. The market rate housing and the workforce housing. I would love to see that type of housing product and see that mix of those products. Even if we're going after the new market tax credits, or if that's part of the proposal, incorporating some of that market rate so that we can increase our tax base as well. Because our end game and our goal is to make sure that we do not have to increase this millage rate for our residents. So the same way that the town of Lake Park took an $87,000 revenue stream from 5 vacant parcels and turned it into 1.7 million, that is exactly what we have to really be mindful of. So developing without displacement. If we can develop this land and incorporate some workforce housing, some market rate housing, and increase our tax base and revenue, then that's exactly what we have to do. But we have to expedite the process of beginning negotiations with a consultant to come in and to update the land zone, land plan development zone, so that we can get some of the proper density and intensity on our corridors. And we also, as a council, already voted to make sure that we focused on Avenue E. As Mr. Brown stated, the development plan has to take into consideration Broadway and Avenue E and almost all the way to Barack, because we want to develop our downtown corridors, but we have to be mindful of the development without displacement. We have to focus on how do we develop it and bring the consultants in, make sure that the community is involved, as we always do, and make sure that we begin changing those zonings so that we can attract the proper development. Mr. Brown and his team, and the team from Atlanta, they came in and worked within our zoning codes. They brought a product to the table that worked within our codes. And unfortunately, this should have been updated years ago. So what we're going to do now is update it immediately and have staff start working on it, because we have the opportunity of piggybacking on a procurement that was done and not have to recreate the wheel on a city that's literally adjacent to us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Anything else? Mr. McCoy and then Mr. Hicks.
I have a question, Mr. Brown. Based upon your analysis and your statement that your 4% credit application is going to be based upon some negotiated terms with the CRA city, is 30 days really reasonable for you to come back, or us to come back with anything to the board?
Repeat the last part of that, Mr. Haygood, so I make sure.
I said, is 30 days reasonable for us to come back to the board with anything definitive about moving forward?
I'll work aggressively to do that. We've already started running financial models. I think the question is more of a staff question between whether or not you feel you have the authority or flexibility to give us feedback of a thumbs up or a thumbs down. You know, as you know, we haven't really talked about the site control items.
Right.
We can make assumptions, and as we have, and whether or not you accept those assumptions, we're making an assumption based on a financial model that we think can work.
And we obviously don't have that authority. That's going to have to be something that the board's going to have to ultimately decide whether or not, for instance, whether or not we're going to sell the property at market rate, or whether you're going to lease it, or exactly how we're going to move forward.
Mr. McCoy.
Well, I'm glad you're looking to the board, because a lot of those things that I seen in those memos wasn't the position of the board. And I'm really disappointed, and that's why I'm going to ask that the board approves Mr. Michael Haygood's contract of just over $17,000, and then we put it back on the agenda come January to see if we can find us a new CRA attorney. Thank you. That's my motion. Well, my motion is to approve his invoice that we did defer to later.
Repeat it again. I want to be clear that I understand your motion.
I move to approve Mr. Michael Haygood's agenda. I'm sorry, Mr. Michael Haygood's invoice of over $17,000.
Okay. Do we have a second to? He's moving on.
Oh,
Mr.
I mean,
McCoy's
isn't
moving.
that, yeah, I was going to say, can we wait till we get to the next item? We're not in that item yet.
That's. I don't think we're done with this item yet. Quite.
Well,
Yeah.
okay.
Thank you, but that'll be coming up shortly. Commissioner Miller Anderson.
No.
Oh, Commissioner Lanier. Sorry.
Madam Chair, I wanted to make a statement that the board was saying that, or I should say McCoy and Commissioner McCoy and Commissioner Lawson were saying that Mr. Fishkind was not here to present his part of the report, meaning that he had nothing to report because there was nothing sent to him. But on another note, where is this developers AVP? Where's that group? Why are they not here?
Mr. McCoy.
Well, perhaps I'm not exactly sure of their whereabouts, but what we did get back from Mr. Haygood was the reason that.
I'm asking Mr. Brown
Okay.
where they are,
Well,
sir.
I think I got the floor now, so I'm gonna go ahead and respond.
Mr. McCoy has the floor.
But Mr. Haygood did send us an email that there was a mistake because there was a response sent by APD, and because of his failure, that was not forwarded back to Mr. Fishkind. So in any event, I don't even know if they knew that they should have been there, but in any event, this was a responsibility that we put in the hands of who would have been the intermediary between the two firms, and that didn't happen. So,
Councilwoman,
the way it works is
Commissioner
when
Lanier,
I'm talking,
Mr.
allow
McCoy
me to
has the
talk.
floor.
And then when I yield back, then you can have the floor. But I would like to finish, so let me go ahead and repeat this. We were sent the email either late today or sometime today saying that there was a mistake made by Mr. Haygood and that it was not sent to Mr. Fishkind. And in all fairness, I don't want to be unfair to Mr. Fishkind, nor do I want to be fair to, I don't want to be unfair to those that had submitted timely, but I'm not in any event going to say that they should have been here when they didn't even have their information sent. But we received a notice or even a memo from Mr. Fishkind that kind of suggested that they didn't do what was asked of them. And if they didn't do what was asked of them, it's likely because the information was never sent to them properly. And we've already gotten one admission to that already today.
Madam Chair?
You're recognized, Commissioner Lanier.
First of all, I was not finished with my question. I wasn't asking the question of the board. I was asking Mr. Brown where ADP was. And I would like him to answer.
Yes, I notified staff that I would be representing the APD TESRA team because Mr. Irons had indicated that he had complied with Dr. Fishkind's request and that they were to huddle on his commitment letter. And so, Mr. Irons...
But I'm asking why are they not here tonight with you?
I'm sorry, Commissioner, you broke up. I didn't quite hear your question.
I'm asking you, why are they not here tonight with you? Either in person or virtually, why they're not here?
They asked me to represent them because they felt they were already in compliance. So the request came from TESRA. As I explained earlier, it was important for me to explain that APD and TESRA, we're not doing a joint venture. We're doing a code.
That's enough. I got it. That's enough. The reason why I asked that question, to you was because that was the same response that Mr. Fishkind gave, that he had gave his report and there was no need for him to be here. So if you're saying that ADP said for you to represent them because they had gave their report and there was no need for them to be here, then it is the same thing.
The request for an extension came from TESRA, not APD.
Excuse me, I'm still talking.
I was answering your question.
The other half of your development team is not here. So the reason why I said that, and I'll say again, was because that was the reason that you used, not you, but the board or Mr. McCoy and Mr. Lawson used to say that why Mr. Fishkind could not be here. Mr. Fishkind said the same thing to Mr. Jonathan Evans, that he had presented his report and that was what he was going to present. And that was the reason why he did not show up tonight, was because his report was submitted based on the fact that he had not got any information from any of the developers. So his report, he felt, was complete.
Are you finished, Commissioner Lanier?
So all I'm going to say, I'm still not finished.
Okay.
I'm still not finished.
Okay.
All I'm going to say is that the way that this has gone down tonight smells really, really bad. And I'm going to make that for the public record.
Thank you.
Madam Chair?
I think she's finished. I think she's finished. All right, I'm not finished. I want to make it clear that I, for one at least, would like to see face-to-face negotiations on behalf of this council, this commission, with the developers, because we have too much email negotiations that have gone on and too little communication with this larger body, and I take responsibility for that. So if we could make sure that we have face-to-face negotiations so that the issues that we've dealt with tonight, at least in part, or haven't dealt with, can be resolved. Mr. Evans, can you make sure that happens?
Certainly, Madam Chair. One of the things that, in light of the discussion and the decision the board made, to conceivably think that 30 days for us to bring something for the board to consider is going to be a Herculean task, let alone to see if a firm has the ability, capacity, and the flexibility, especially in light of the holidays, to work with us to review all the documents. I certainly would ask the board to consider a longer time frame, as well as we can look at having a joint workshop with the development group to work on an agenda and what are the outstanding questions, and get clarity from the board with the consultant present so they can hear the discussion and then get clear direction from the board. And I think that's the safest and most expeditious way to bring this to a point where decisions can be made and make sure there's no ambiguity or confusion in the process.
Thank you. So given that we have the holidays, would it be sensible to say that we would look to having a meeting, to having a final decision of some sort in early February?
If it is the board's pleasure, what I'd like to do is make some phone calls tomorrow and then reach out back to the board and see if there's an opportunity to have maybe a meeting, what have you, to just bring you up to speed on what the consultant can provide, and then we can look to work out a timeline and provide you some opportunities where we can sit down and have that conversation. But I would at least like to have that discussion. I may be able to, if the board is so inclined, to provide you an update at our regular city council meeting during my comments with respect to the conversations. And so maybe the board can provide me some additional direction at that time, so that gives me a little bit of time.
Okay, are we all right with waiting until the next city council meeting?
We wouldn't be able to give you any direction during that. We wouldn't be able to give you any voting direction during that time, right?
That is correct. I would just ask for consensus with respect to, I would give you a status as well as a tentative timeline and see if the board, has any issues or heartburn. And I can give you an update on the conversations I've had with one or two firms concerning that. And then if there's a desire for us to set a future meeting date, we can look to do that. But just bringing you up to speed, the quickest time I can do that would be at the regular meeting of the City Council on the 16th.
Okay, that's fine.
I'm okay with that. Everybody okay with that?
Madam Chair,
Madam Chair? Yes, Madam Chair.
Commissioner Lanier?
I wanted to ask, what consultant are we talking about now?
Mr. Evans?
Certainly, I'm going to reach out to and look at the solicitation that Lake Park put out and see what that is, see if it's all encompassing. If not, then look for firms that provide that financial overview or perspective with regards to these types of arrangements and P3 structures. So I'm going to be looking at both of those to see if the previous or the entity that was talked about today can facilitate the review. If not, then looking at what firms can provide that service.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, we are looking at what we wanted to do initially with this proposal was to, and I've said this 5 times tonight, was number 1, find out if the developer had the financial capacity to do this project, and number 2, to find out if the proposal was feasible for the city of Riviera Beach. And if we cannot find someone that has the financial capability as a fish guide or PFM company, then we need to make sure that we have that on board. We need to make sure that the developer and who we are dealing with has the financial capacity to be able to do this project as it stands.
Any other comments?
Madam Chair?
Mr. Lawson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
My understanding.
Commissioner Lanier, I've already recognized Commissioner Lawson. Mr. Lawson.
I wasn't finished.
You paused for long enough that it seemed like you were. I'm sorry. Mr. Lawson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Brown, the position that you're here on behalf and representing the interests of Mr. Von Irons and the ADB team. So you are speaking on behalf of both teams.
Yes.
So essentially, contrary to my colleague, that there was representation from the organization because you are speaking on behalf of the team, where I believe that the consultant had the opportunity to send a representative if they weren't able to attend. So I know that myself and Councilman McCoy were referencing unison about concerns with presentation or being here for this meeting, but I do appreciate you coming to the meeting. I do appreciate you taking the time to work with our team, and I do agree with my chair that we do need to have in-person negotiations because we're asking for an organization to invest into our community. I want to make sure that this project is done properly. I want to make sure that the financial capacity is in hand and that we can be as creative as possible to get a project done, knowing the limitations that you have with development in our community and knowing where our zoning stands currently. That's not comparable to other communities that have $6 billion worth of development. So as of right now, until we update some of our land zoning codes, we have to work with what we have, and we're going to be very creative to get this done. So based upon everything that I've seen today and based on the process of doing it properly, I think this project smells just fine to me. So I thank you guys for coming, and I appreciate your time. And Mr. Evans, I trust that you will do your very best job to begin the negotiations and conversation with getting something done for our community, because you've done an amazing job and you'll continue to do that. So thank you, Mr. Evans, and thank you, Mr. Brown. Thank you, Mr. Sappho, for coming tonight. Appreciate it.
Madam Chair.
Do you mind if I say one thing?
Yeah, go ahead, sorry.
All right, I'm Mr. Sappho, part owner of Tesraw Partners. I speak for all local contractors. For all our detractors, let's keep in mind, I am a local, homegrown developer. I'm so proud to be here right now. And for all the guys I work with every day out there, when will we have an opportunity like this to let somebody from home work with the city that they love, like myself? For many years, we have been promised that there will be wealth created, there will be opportunities for local contractors to be in higher positions and opportunities and developments in the city. Question I have, if not now, then when?
Thank you. Anything else from Commissioner?
Madam Chair.
You're recognized, Commissioner Lanier.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I am all for homegrown. I am all for local developers. I have nothing against this group or this set of developers who are standing before the council now. I have nothing against them. My concern is for the money that the residents spend, the taxes that they pay in this city. That whoever we are going to have that is going to do a development that is well over $100 billion, that we seriously vet financially this group to make sure that everything that is done in terms of spending taxpayer dollars is done in such a way that the people who are doing this work, these developers, have the financial wherewithal to be able to do it. I have nothing against Tesraw. I have nothing against ADP. I have nothing against Mr. Tony Brown at all. I just want to make sure that the money that the residents are spending, this is their money. We are talking about the money that the residents, this is their money. This is not the council's money. This is not either one of the individual council members' money. This is not our money. This money belongs to the taxpayers. And we had better make sure that the people who we are dealing with, and I'm not saying that they're shady or not, all I'm saying is that we have to do our due diligence to make sure that the money that we are putting up and we're working with this group is that they have the wherewithal to do what they say they're going to do. And that is all the consultant is trying to accomplish. That is all we need to know. If a person is going to come into the city and is going to do business with the city, do they have the financial capability to do it? It's simple. And I'm not going to sit up here and act as if this is my money, because it is not my money. This is the taxpayers' money. And they have the right to understand and the right to know that we are doing our due diligence to make sure that their money is being spent properly and that the people who we are dealing with has money to bring to the table as well. and we are not footing this whole bill, because there have been projects that the city has done, and the city ended up holding the bag for it. So no, I am not going to back off in terms of making sure that the people who pay taxes in this city, money is safeguarded, and that we do our due diligence to make sure that the people who we're dealing with have the financial capability to get this job done.
Thank you, Commissioner
That's my
Lanier.
comments.
Thank you. Mr. McCoy. Your mic.
I'm sorry, I didn't know that the taxpayers was footing the money for this. That's why we were seeking an outside developer that was going to provide the financing for it. And if I might add, if they're for some reason unable to fulfill their obligation under the development agreement, the taxpayers aren't out of anything. That comes with some level of bonding. So to sit here and mislead the members of the public to suggest that the taxpayers are now fronting the money for this is absolutely ludicrous. And I would say maybe there should be some handout or some sort of publication about exactly how this development process works. We rely on the private sector and developers to use their financing to come up with this. And in the event, if the market changes, if some miraculous force majeure, is that what was it?
Good one.
Force majeure or some pandemic causes this to not go through, there are safeguards and bonding mechanisms so the taxpayers are not responsible. And I think it's disingenuous from the commissioner from the 3rd District to say something such misleading. I am really beyond tired of going back and forth with the misinformation. So if we're gonna go ahead and I have the floor, it works when I finish talking, then you're recognized. But that's outright disrespectful, wrong, and it's rude. And perhaps you need a little bit of an orientation or a lesson. But we've been doing this long enough. And what we don't need to do is get past these little small challenges and then have a member of the board to suggest something, not just to the members of this meeting, but to everybody that's tuned in across the city that's absolutely incorrect. And perhaps you need to take a little bit of a lesson on how this developmental finance work. And Madam Chair, I yield back and I renew my motion to approve Mr. Michael Haygood's invoice.
Thank you. I think it is probably time to move on. Did we have a second? Did we have a second on that motion? I believe we did.
I want to, are we not going to get to that next item?
I think that we've concluded everything we have to say. Mr. Evans, have we, excuse me, Commissioner Lanier, we're trying to determine whether or not we have concluded our conversation about item number 5. Mr. Evans, do you have sufficient information to move forward?
But I had a question, Madam. The 30 days that we just approved, do we need to take that motion back?
Mr. Evans suggested that he was going to consult with the consultants and provide us with a report at our next city council meeting, that we could give him consensus, because we know we're not going to vote on it at a council meeting because it's a CRA issue, that we would provide him with consensus from this group acting as CRA.
Do we want to keep the 30-day? We already voted on that, so we want to keep that until the next week and see if it needs to be changed.
Until he has an opportunity, yes.
But we don't have another meeting.
Madam Chair, what I would recommend is that in my correspondence, I will send communications to the board. If there is a action that is contemplated, I'll just we'll make sure we keep the agenda light for the we already have the agenda for the 16th, but we'll have a meeting immediately following that would be able to provide, additional time if necessary once I do have the conversations with the firms. So
basically going to have a special CRA meeting, you're saying?
Right. We can possibly have one after the city council meeting on the 16th, but I'll have more clarity hopefully tomorrow or Friday.
So hopefully we're finished with this topic. Anything else from Mr. Lawson on this topic, dare I ask?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm done.
Thank you.
No, make sure that the manager gets some sort of publication or periodical or something about how this whole partnership or development agreement works. That's what I would say, because
Okay,
that's absolutely wrong.
Okay.
And I'm aggravated that we're sitting in this meeting, continuing going back and forth with somebody that doesn't even understand the rudimentary
Okay.
and fundamental understanding. And that's embarrassing. So we can't sit here and wonder why Lake Park can move so far ahead when we've got a very member of this board that doesn't even understand the ABCs of how a development agreement works.
Thank you, Mr. McCoy. We're going to move on to item number 5A now,
Madam Chair,
which is
Madam Chair,
Commissioner
I have one
Commissioner Lanier. We're going to move on, if you don't mind, please, to item 5A. The hour is getting very late, and I believe that.
Madam Chair, this is not- you gave everybody else an opportunity to say something about
Yeah,
the
go-
item
go.
before you stopped.
You're recognized, Commissioner Lanier.
I just wanted to let to know that I do have some understanding of how this whole thing works. Tax increment, which is TIF money, is derived from taxpayers, which means that it is coming from an increase in taxes from taxpayers. It's what they call TIF money. So I do understand what this means. That's all I needed to say.
Thank you. Can we move on to item 5A? I believe Mr. McCoy made a motion to pay the invoice that we have for Mr. Haygood's services, and I believe we have a second. We had a second to that motion by Mr. Lawson, if
Yes,
I'm
Madam
not
Chair.
wrong. So we have a motion and a second to approve the invoice for Mr. Haygood's services. Madam Clerk?
Commissioner McCoy?
Yes.
Commissioner Lanier?
No.
Commissioner Miller Anderson?
Yes.
Vice Chair Lawson?
Yes.
Chair Botel?
Yes. That motion is approved with a vote of 4-1.
Madam Chair, we have one public comment card.
I'm sorry?
We have a public comment card
Oh, we
for
do.
this meeting.
Okay, thank you. We better do that. It's given that it's 11 o'clock, 11:02. Is that by the one person remaining in the audience?
Yes, Madam Chair. JB Dixon?
No, we got Mr. Justin Bourne. He has a comment card.
I beg your pardon?
What? Good, good. Miss,
Are we
Ms. Dixon,
starting now?
Yes, please state your name and
I
address.
am more than annoyed. I would like to agree with Commissioner Miller Anderson's much earlier comment that this is about the embarrassment to the city. These meetings are an embarrassment to the city. These meetings are a public relations disaster for this city. If you want to have something like Lake Park just presented, you probably should look at some of their meetings also, and some of their public information meetings, which are much more well attended than ours. Their meetings are much more civil, they are much more educated, and we embarrass ourselves countrywide. Countrywide, you hire consultants, then you totally disregard their advice. So you either don't know how to hire the right consultants, or you don't know how to use the right consultants that you are paying. And we've had many examples of that, from consultants who are supposed to find us executives, forget what they have to say. We have other consultants on financial matters, very well known nationally. Not only do you ignore them, you insult them, you browbeat them publicly, when you could very well express your displeasure to whatever consultant you have should be done in private, because what other consultant will ever want to work for you? The better they are, the more they're not going to expose themselves to this kind of a circus and put up with this kind of disrespect. Never mind the fact that they're paid. The fact that you're paying them does not give you the right to disrespect them publicly. And that can be said for people who want to come here to work as an executive. Watching these meetings, listening to the constant repetition of people and the nitpicking and the teeniest details and the total lack of an ability to, as Councilwoman Miller Anderson said, move ahead. And then every time somebody new is elected, well, I wasn't there, I didn't invent this, now we have to stop, we have to go back, we have to reconsider everything. You just need probably to have an executive session in which you can discuss this without embarrassing yourselves. And as far as public information meetings, let's look at the elephant in the room about that. Have you been to very many of them? They are pitifully poorly attended. So everybody gets up and it's like, Mother God and apple pie. Oh, we just won, and we're going to have lots of public input.
Was that the timer? Thank you, Ms. Dixon.
Thank you.
Any other public comment?
That's the end of public comment.
Thank
Madam
you.
Chair.
I think we are at the point at which we will have a CRA director, executive director report. Mr. Evans.
Madam Chair, I have nothing to report this evening.
Thank you. Report of General Counsel.
Madam Chair, I have nothing.
Thank you. Discussion by the board, starting with Councilwoman Lanier.
Yes, I would just like to say I certainly agree with the resident who talked about disparaging consultants and disparaging the people that we work with, because that is just uncalled for. If we have a situation or we have issues with a consultant, we need to take that up with them in private and not come to a meeting and disparage their credentials. And it's happened before, and time again, it keeps happening, and we wonder why we can't get good people to work with us. It is because of this. If we wanted to get rid of Fishkind, then that's what we could have done. Disparage this man's credentials and disparage his work, but he had nothing to work with, is really not, it's not good for the city. And I look forward to working with whomever to move this project forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Lawson.
Madam Chair, I'm going to be in agreement with what my speaker from our resident just said, because it is very difficult when we have such a divided dais and somewhat of a lack of understanding of certain concepts. For us to make these decisions and for us to have these discussions and to go back and forth in this public arena is difficult for us as a city to move forward. A lot of us, if we can try as a council to have agenda reviews, to have discussions outside of the meetings and really try to get some of the concerns and questions addressed prior to the meeting, then we could possibly expedite our agenda. We could possibly make sure that we can move in an expedited fashion. I also do have to disagree with some of the statements and sentiments of my colleague and also the speaker, because in addition to some of the discussion and dialogue with how we move forward, we put out an ad for a CRA director, and we had 72 applicants, and we, after deliberating for hours on end, decided to throw that entire process out and the advice and recommendations of the consultant to go forward with an in-house hire. I'm supportive of the decision the DIA has made, but let's just call it for what it is. Let's not just pick and choose what we want to decide is a good decision or a bad decision, or what's going to be a good representation of our city and what's not. If we question certain items on this dais, it's because we're doing it in the best interest of the residents, first and foremost. So as of right now, moving forward, as I instructed Mr. Evans and staff, and I want the support of our colleagues, is to bring in the consultant to begin the discussions of moving the densities and intensities in our community, and as a community moving forward. We can no longer just keep talking about it. We need to get it done. Lack of communication is not acceptable. Lack of forwarded of memos and emails is not acceptable. Lack of not having in-person meetings is not acceptable. So anybody that comes to this meeting, I don't want to have any disparaging remarks, whether it's developers, whether it's consulting, whether it's anyone that wants to work with the city. I want them to be honored to come into our city and want to work with our city. Those are my comments, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Miller-Anderson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to make an announcement regarding our first annual Light Up Riviera Holiday Decorating Contest. Thought I'd end the night with a very bright spot here. It's for the residents to decorate your home with your holiday lights, and you could win a prize. First place would receive $100, and second place, $50. Each winner will be recognized on the city's social media website, TV18, at a city council meeting, and receive a congratulatory yard sign. We're asking for council members and the mayor to participate in an advertisement, and I believe you all received an email regarding it, so if you could take a look at that, and then to also be the judges for the contest. If you're interested in doing so, please, well, for the residents, if you're interested in the contest, go to the website, the city's website. You'll see a spot on there that tells you what the deadline is, which is Sunday, December 20th at 5 p.m. So be sure to register, and hopefully we could have something very nice to end the year with. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner McCoy?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Evans, I would like to see if we can have Mr. Hager's agenda placed on the, Mr. Hager's contract placed on the next agenda, please. Does that need to be a consensus of the board, or should I just add it through Novus?
Something with regards to that, certainly we would prefer to have consensus of the board.
Okay, well, so me as a member, a lawmaker, policymaker of this body, I'm not able to go into Novus to add that to the agenda. I'm not able to add anything that I want to have a discussion on.
You can.
With regards to the employment of the CRA attorney.
His contract, Mr. Evans.
His contract, we can place his contract on the.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, if I may, but concerning, we have to write the agenda item that's accompanying the contract. So we would need more specificities as it relates to.
Well, I want to do discussion and deliberations, and it was my idea to offer a presentation because clearly we've been quoted in the newspaper about how this lacked communication. We came back, designated Mr. Haygood as the point person to deliver that communication, and we get a apology email just shortly before the meeting. It's 2020, and I'm done with accepting that's just 2020 and the way things happen. There has to be some accountability. For folks to get up and suggest that it's embarrassing, it's more embarrassing for us to get up here and then get hit with surprises left and right, all because somebody forgot or it's a miscommunication. And we're on the hot seat 24/7. And thankfully tonight, we didn't get beat up too bad, only amongst ourselves. But I would ask the members to support me in placing it on the agenda for our next CRA meeting after January 2021.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I think, you should be able to just go into Novus and put it on. You can put that on.
Well, obviously, that's not what the CRA director.
You can put anything on the agenda.
Okay.
So if you want to do that, go ahead and do it.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have, Madam Chair. And happy birthday.
And happy birthday to you, too.
Well, Madam Chair, I celebrate all month, so I have a birthday all the way up until the 31st. So thank you, and happy, 45th birthday to you?
Oh, yeah, thank you.
I just have one other thing, unless you wanted to do it.
I'm sorry?
Unless you wanted to do it. I was going to say one more thing. Sure.
I have just a few remarks. The All Things Marine webinar that we did the other night was very successful, but I've continued to have questions, particularly from people in the Sugar Sands area. So we'll be hosting a special meeting on that topic of managed mooring fields for Sugar Sands. It will be one evening in the next couple of weeks at 6 o'clock at the Ambassador Center, as soon as I get a date from Mr. John Sprague when he's available. Also, there will be an item on an upcoming agenda relating to a moratorium on floating structures so that we can have time to formulate a plan to react to an ordinance that's going to be coming out from the city. So be on the lookout for that. That's just a heads up. It will be on some upcoming agenda, and I'm not sure which of our next meetings that will be on. And in addition, we're planning a community meeting next week on Singer Island to discuss police presence on the island. So please stay tuned for a date for that. That will be one evening next week at 6 o'clock at the Ambassador Center. Chief Osgood will be there, Mr. Evans will be there, and we'll be discussing the police presence on the island. And that is all I have. Does anybody have anything else? Seeing no further business, this meeting is adjourned.